So it's definitely been over a month now since I saw The Substance, but I just couldn't get on here and review it right away. There is so much going on in that movie that I really had to like let it marinate a little bit. I had to read interviews, I had to read reviews, I had to watch analysis to like make sure I fully understood everything. The story follows aging actress Elisabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore, as she appears to be at the end of a very successful career in Hollywood. What seems like she was once an A-list actress, she is now doing workout videos a la Jane Fonda. When she gets into a traumatic car accident, she's offered to be part of a program in which she takes a substance called the Substance, which will give her the opportunity for 7 days to be a much better version of herself. She begins to take this substance. A new Elisabeth Sparkle named Sue emerges from her spine and begins to live the life that Elisabeth wishes that she was still living. Of course, if it seems too good to be true, it always is. Eventually, Sue starts to take advantage of the situation, staying in Elisabeth's world longer than the 7 days she's supposed to, and thus sucking Elisabeth of her life force. A whole bunch of other random stuff happens at the end of the movie. Well, we will get into that. So overall, I definitely will say that I enjoyed the movie. I don't think it was hard to understand. There were a couple places that lost me a little bit, but I definitely say it was a very enjoyable movie. I thought Demi Moore was fantastic as Elisabeth Sparkle, and I couldn't help but watching it and watching her and thinking, dang, if she's insecure, I might as well just jump off the nearest cliff. I thought the casting of Margaret Qualley was great, and she does have a certain je ne sais quoi for this role that I think was really good. For me, it would have made more sense if they casted Sue to look more like Elisabeth, but she said that they were a younger, better version. So maybe that's a part of the story somehow, that a younger, better version of you looks absolutely nothing like you at all. We know that Dennis Quaid was casted as the boss of Elisabeth Sparkle. The role was supposed to go originally to Ray Liotta, who I really could definitely see him in this role. I feel like he would have brought a New York wise guy kind of vibe to that role, but then Dennis Quaid kind of brings in like that LA sleazeball. I also think that it's really interesting to cast Dennis Quaid because if I'm not mistaken, his wife is like 25 to 30 years younger than he is. So who better else to talk about how, you know, women past 25, what happens to their eggs or whatever the hell he said in the movie, except someone who's dating a woman who's 32 and he's like 75 or something. I said 25, 39 years younger than him. He is 70 and she's 39 years younger than him, so that means she's 31 now. Oh, he confirmed his engagement in 2019, so they must have been together at least a year before that, let's say. So 2018, which is 6 years ago, which means she was 24 and he was 64. They grown, that's their business. Get a bag, sis. Get the bag. Demi Moore's acting was phenomenal in the movie. The height of her career, Demi's career, was in the 80s, you know, so, but there was a resurgence of Demi Moore around 2004, 2005, because she played a role in the Charlie Angels movie at the time. People hadn't seen her for a while, and she had a scene coming out of the water and showed her gorgeous bikini body, and from there she was just everywhere. She was on everything, back like she never left. And that was around the same time when she got with Ashton Kutcher, and he was 14 years younger than her, I think. They were the Hollywood it couple. They was out about all around the place. And I feel like the history definitely matters here. The director of the movie, she did an interview. The interviewer asked her like, okay, when you were casting this, you were basically gonna have to go to an actress and like say, I want to cast you in this role because you're old and your career is behind you and you're gonna play this role. And he was like how was that process like, having to ask somebody that? And I thought that was a great question because I was that definitely thinking that. She said that Demi was actually perfect because she had just written her autobiography, and that she said that Demi had already done the work already, confronted the aging process and stuff, and did a lot of self-work and therapy and all these kinds of things. I'm glad that Demi Moore was a dark-haired beauty, and that person that came out of her was also a dark-haired beauty. She didn't come out blonde hair and blue eyes. And this is, of course, nothing against blondes. As you can see, I love blondes. I love being a blonde, but it's just when there's a certain type of beauty standard that you always see, it is nice to see that subverted. So the reason why the director made this film, she said, because of the violent self-hatred that she felt, I believe, when she turned 40 years old. That this movie for her was her version of standing on the tallest building in the city and screaming to people, this is what you're doing to women, this is what you're doing to us, this is violent the way you treat us when we age, this is violence the way you treat us if we're not beautiful. This film was basically her like, bleh, regurgitating all of this stuff that she's been pent up. The movie did not have a lot of dialogue, which I thought was really good. I also think it really speaks to the whole show don't tell thing, which I thought was really great, and that's definitely something that I took from the film as a filmmaker. I did slightly feel like the messaging of the movie is a little bit dated. So sometimes a movie that will come into the consciousness, let's say in 2015, not getting actually made and done until 2024. I mean, that's also partial due to the fact that feminism is moving so fast because of social media, whereas it might have taken longer before. It's like we're exchanging ideas right now, tonight. Tonight, I could come up with a feminist theory and put it on TikTok, and then it could go viral, and now 1 million women have this belief system. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't think that there's ever not a time to talk about how society treats women, aging, beauty, and all this stuff. When I was watching the movie and how much it had objectified Demi Moore and Margaret, it was like repulsive, honestly. Listen, I know that that's what she was trying to do. And I even struggle with that myself sometimes, is that things like my movie Primal Fear talks about violence against women and, depicting that. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm not going to have a definitive answer for everything or how to do this, but do you have to show the thing that you're trying to show a message about? The boobs and the butt print and the freaking camel toe. Do we actually have to see it to know that that's what's happening? Did you actually have to objectify Demi and Margaret in this movie to show that? Question. Let me know what you think about that. I did feel a bit uncomfortable with the extensive nudity, but that's also something that I had to check myself on, because I had to tell myself, it's just a body. We all have bodies. If we're all, fair people, which I hope that we are, we can understand where the place of body positivity came from. We all know there are certain places, certain ways it's gone off the fucking rails. I'm someone that's more about body neutrality. A body is neither good nor bad. But for me, the objectification of the women in the movie did seem like it was participating in the problem. And I say this as someone who's currently writing a movie where a woman gets brutalized in it. Like I said, it's not black and white. There's no answer. But I do feel like in a certain way she could have pulled back on that. More overall thoughts. I really love that the movie used practical effects and not a lot of CGI. And I really love the feeling of the movie. It felt very futuristic, but it felt very vintage at the same time. It felt 80s, but it also felt like the year 2075. Let's break down the actual movie. Honestly, one of the best parts of the film is literally the opening. What an exercise in show don't tell. We should all aspire to be like that as filmmakers. The movie begins with a shot of Los Angeles to Hollywood, on Hollywood Boulevard, where the Walk of Fame stars are. It shows us from the plain concrete to a star being constructed, to the star being there for their crowning event, to fans coming and taking pictures with it. And over time, it shows how less and less people are excited to see the star. They watch the star crack and food drops on it. And you just basically watch how over time someone's star literally fades. So Elisabeth Sparkle is doing one of her workout shows, and it's towards the end of one of her taping sessions. It's also her birthday. Everybody's telling her happy birthday. This film has so many references. As soon as she steps into the hallway, red walls, the shining carpet, I'm like, oh shit, what the hell is about to go down in this fucking movie? Elisabeth tries to go to the bathroom. She's not able to go to the female bathroom, so she goes into the men's bathroom, only to hear her boss, played by Dennis Quaid, come in, and he's talking about how old and raggedy she is, and how he needs to find someone better and younger. And then he starts talking about women's fertility. You know what happens to them after they turn 25. Something about this movie reminds me of the Powerpuff Girls. I don't know if it's the movements or like something about it did seem kind of like cartoonish, or like the simple, very simple furniture. Something about it just reminded me of the Powerpuff Girls. I don't know how to explain it. So Demi meets up with Dennis Quaid, and they're at lunch, and they just basically show how much of a disgusting pig he is. Eats like 30 shrimp with the shell on. You see the shrimp all in his teeth and it's falling out on the side and all kinds of nastiness. And she's like watching him. She's like, ew. So Elisabeth leaves, and she unfortunately gets into a car accident. While at the hospital, the doctor doesn't even treat her like a person. He's just talking about her, about how much of a fan he was of her. And so while in the hospital, right before she leaves, the doctor's nursing assistant, a total freak, his face is like geometrically perfect. Okay, he looks like an AI, tells her that she would be perfect for a program. And he slips a USB into her pocket to tell her to check it out. So as she's leaving the hospital, she runs into one of her old high school classmates who is just doting on her, telling her how amazing she looks. Oh, I would love to get together with you. And she's really just blowing him off at this point, but she decides to take his number, and she's like, okay, thank you. So she goes home and she decides to have a look at the USB drive with the information of the substance on it. Basically explains everything that needs to be done, how she's basically going to be able to create this younger version of herself by taking this thing called the substance. Now, the substance is obviously an allegory, metaphor for, I'm sure, Botox, Ozempic, whatever they're putting in those butt fillers, women who are inserting all kinds of substances, literally substances into their hips, their butt, their thighs, their boobs, or whatever, just to make them bigger. So the substance represents that. That's like, what are we injecting into ourselves? What are we injecting into our face? With the substance, there are rules. You have to switch every 7 days. You have to keep the other person, comfortable, alive. You have to equalize. One thing I also didn't like is that a lot of these terms were kind of vague. Like, it really doesn't matter what it is. It's just like, these are the rules. But like, one thing in particular that I didn't really understand, the whole idea that you are one, you are the same. And I don't know if that was to basically say sometimes we as women might disconnect our younger, beautiful selves from who we are now. And I can definitely relate to that. But I said, again, it was kind of confusing because Margaret Qualley did not look like Demi Moore. So if she did, I feel like it could have made sense. Like, Demi's referring to her as she. Margaret is referring to Demi as she. So she tosses the information about the substance out. She says she's not about to fuck with it. Then she has a change of heart and she decides to go pursue it. But basically she had to go to like the edge of town behind God's back. She had to go to this empty warehouse where the door didn't even open all the way and she had to crouch down. I mean, she's crazy, right? And I feel like the director definitely showed us this to show how literally desperate women can be in order to look younger, to be more beautiful, to have that same kind of recognition and attention and stuff that we once had when we were in our early 20s. That was the other thing too, is that Margaret Qualley is a grown-ass woman. Okay, from what I understand, she's 30. I think that it also could have increased it more if she was younger. She looks young, obviously she's young. But I feel like if it was younger, like if it was like a 22-year-old girl, I feel like that could have added some more, like, just a little something. So she goes, she unlocks this lockbox and she gets the substance stuff. She takes it back home. She goes into the bathroom. She starts to set up. She's completely naked. Again, I was just like, do we really got to do her like this, you know? You know, there was a certain guilt of me for watching it because I'm like, the movie is accusing Demi of being ugly and old. I felt bad for her. Like, I didn't like that. Like, I had like the empathy, like, pull of like, why is this movie like doing you like that? Like, why are they doing you so dirty, you know? But I thought it was really good to see, obviously, an older woman's body on camera, on screen, despite how beautiful Demi's body is. You know, she's like perfect looking, not like your average, you know, 60-year-old woman. It just puts that out there to you that you really do not see older women's bodies on camera, or even just older people in general. Like, free game, that's another market that's totally left out, is like older people. Like, it's like they're basically forgotten about. So as Demi takes a substance, she starts to change. She's writhing, she's just twisting and turning, and eventually Margaret Qualley rips open her spine and comes through her back. So as Margaret born, she's like a baby deer, like shaky legs. She doesn't know what she's doing. She barely can talk. And then eventually she gets the hang of it. She follows the directions. She knows what she needs to do. The stabilizing process looked like a bit of a reverse epidural. And I was also toying with that too when I was watching the movie. Like, something about it reminded me of Motherhood too, and the sacrifices that mothers make for their children. She was a part of Demi, and she just burst from her spine, younger and beautiful, right? So imagine a mom seeing her daughter younger and beautiful. Hopefully you love that about your daughter, but I'm sure, you know, women are human on some level, that you might look at your daughter and think, that was my past. Now you're living the best life. You know, you're younger. Let's say that they are you, but better, again, like you, but better, like with better features. That kind of reminded me of Motherhood in that way. And especially the fact that Margaret's character had to keep using Demi's spinal fluid in order to equalize herself. So she was always taking from Demi, like the way children take from their mothers, because she literally gave everything for her. And like, her doing that aged her. It made her older, it made her fatter, it made her more stressed out. And the girl wasn't doing anything that she was supposed to be doing. She was being very irresponsible. Honestly, it really came off like an allegory for motherhood, you know, that whatever Demi gave her, it was just never good enough. She just keep sucking her dry. So Margaret eventually heads to the audition, which is to replace Elisabeth Sparkle and start a new show with a younger, hotter person. It's really like that. Ask any model, any actress that will tell you. I'm sure they have plenty of horror stories of some casting agent that looks like who did it and ran, telling them that they're not thin enough, they're not pretty enough. Sue is living her best life. Everybody loves her. Dennis Quaid loves her. Sue is very much like, bimbo is not the right word, but she does feel very vapid. Like, there doesn't really appear to be a lot of soul to her. She's just about the vibes. She's just about looking pretty, looking cute. She's just about success, being seen, being viewed a certain way. When Sue does her first commercial, she's shaking ass all over the place. You know, everybody loves her. She's perfect. She's like, hey, all you girls and girls, love you so much, okay? Bye. At this point, she's completely neglecting Demi. She doesn't give a fuck if the food gets low. She's got a man, she's got friends, places to be, things to do. She's booked and busy. Demi is slowly dying and being sucked dry of her life force on the bathroom floor, behind a wall. And I also think it's very interesting that no one has ever come to look for Elisabeth during this time. No one's ever come to check on her. So one of the next times that Elisabeth shows up to the office, she sees that all her pictures have been taken down. Her boss is giving her a box of her belongings and some old cookbook, which honestly seemed like a gift that was for somebody else that he didn't want. And they're just really like ready to move on, get rid of her, push her out, and start with Sue, who is the next shiny new toy for them. So now at this point, Elisabeth seems to be completely getting all her joy through living through Sue. This movie shows naked bodies a lot. It shows Margaret Qualley's body. It shows Demi Moore's body a lot. I do find it interesting to learn that Margaret Qualley claims that she wore prosthetics, so those were not her breasts. effects that you see in the movie, and that she did have to lose weight and probably worked out to try and tone, or I'm sure Demi Moore probably also dieted and exercised and did everything she could to portray this role. I do think that it's interesting because not too long ago, Demi Moore was in a bit of a scandal because people had suspected that she had some very bad plastic surgery, but it really just speaks to what Elisabeth Sparkle was going through, and the fact that the real actress that played her had a plastic surgery scandal recently. So it's Sue's turn to be back out into society. Things are going well. Her and her cast and crew are going out for a night on the town. She gets in her sexy bodysuit. She comes home that night. She brings the guy home and she realizes that she needs to equalize. At this moment, she decides that she's going to take more from Elisabeth than she's supposed to. She's got Elisabeth in the back like a dirty little secret, and this definitely can be an allegory for how a lot of women feel, in that we hide ourselves if we don't look our best. I just had someone ask to FaceTime me today, and I said, no, I'm laying down, I can't, because that happens to a lot of women where you don't want to be seen if you're not looking a certain way of how you want people to see you, right? This whole movie, I never felt like Sue was a real person. She really came off like a manic pixie dream girl. She really came off like a Stepford wife. She really came off like an AI girlfriend. As I think more about how there's so many elements of this movie that allude to motherhood, parenthood, this is kind of like your parents telling you, we gave you this card, okay, it's for emergencies only, and you take it and you end up going and spending $300 on a credit card. She takes more fluids from Elisabeth. She goes back to the guy, and the guy even tells her, wow, you look so much more beautiful than you did before you left. So the next day, Elisabeth finally wakes up. Sue is inside like she's supposed to be. And Elisabeth goes into her apartment and sees that it's completely trashed. And as she goes to reach to take a sticky note off of the glass, she looks at her finger and she sees it's like, knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. And so she freaks out and she calls the people who create the substance to let them know that Sue is basically not following the rules and that she's partying and she's destroying her house. And the guy is basically telling her, listen, y'all are one, respect the balance. I really cannot stay away from this whole motherhood thing. This is what she's doing. She's doing this. She's doing that. Da, 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 da. Could be like, wait till your father gets home. I'm calling him. Why is she, complaining about their kid acting up? So she asks them if there's any way that she can reverse this. And they basically tell her, no, there's no way to reverse this. I would say that is the biggest problem that I have with the movie is you are one, respect the balance. And unless this is, like I said, an allegory for motherhood, it doesn't make sense. You are one, with your child is you. Your child is you. And so you have to respect the laws of nature, that your child is going to get out there and they're going to do their thing. They're going to take advantage of you. They're going to make you scared. They're going to ruin your life in some way, but that is just the natural order of life, of having children. Upon further research, director Coralie does not have children. This could be a nightmare scenario of motherhood for the director, how she perceives what having a child would be like and projecting it onto the screen. Honestly, when writing it, she might not even know that this is what she was doing, and she basically said as much in one of her interviews. The interviewer also acknowledged the motherhood undertones of the film. Who knows? It could be a call to the relationship she had with her own mother, where she feels she might have taken her for granted. So Elisabeth gets noticed for another substance pickup, and she, for whatever reason, decides to continue going on with it. After she leaves the creepy dungeon place where she gets the medication, she goes to a diner, and she ends up seeing a man who's creepily staring at her. It turns out that this man is also doing the same substance procedure, and that his young doppelganger, so to speak, is the guy who was at the doctor's office earlier on in the movie. And he talks about how, has the person started taking from you yet? So after leaving the diner, one of the more striking moments of the movie happened in this scene. And as she reaches home, she runs into the guy that Sue was hooking up with the night before. This guy is so nasty to her. He is literally disgusting. Get the fuck out the way, bitch! Like, and he ends up driving off really fast, like skirting around her. That scene struck with me so hard because that really is how some men treat you when they're not attracted to you. Like, I've lived many lives, I've traveled many places, I've gone so many different levels in my femininity journey, in my beauty journey. There have been times when I cared a lot, when I didn't care. Like, I have seen how men treat you when you're very, very skinny, and how they treat you when you're not, and how they treat you when you're young, and how they treat you when you're semi-young. They treat you with this nasty, scary hostility. I feel like that scene really summed it up, honestly. This exists on an individual level, but it also exists on a macro level. Move out of the way, you old bitch, okay? Go sit down somewhere, get in your fucking wheelchair, get the fuck out the way. After this moment, afraid of being alone, Elisabeth decides that she is going to call up her old classmate that she met earlier on in the movie. This moment was kind of like icky to me because I'm like, damn girl, you feeling down bad right now. So you're like, oh, I'm going to just call this guy up to give myself a nice little ego boost. She contacted her classmate, and the way they edited it was actually very interesting because they made it seem like he was rejecting her even though he wasn't. He was actually really surprised that she decided to call him and meet up with him. So they decide that they are going to meet up and go on a date. This is another one of the striking moments of the movie, which has clips that have gone around the internet, that have gone a bit viral, that really show kind of like the crux of the movie, honestly. Elisabeth is in the mirror, she's getting dressed, she's looking at herself, and she just hates what she sees. Puts on this thing and that thing, and she covers her neck and she covers her boobs, and then she takes it off, and then she changes colors, and she adds lipstick, then she takes it off. She adds all these things because she's just not happy with the way she looks. It's never fucking enough. And so what she ends up doing is she ends up not even going at all, and there's just an amazing shot of her sitting on the corner of the bed, and she's just looks so broken, you know? She just looks so sad. And I definitely relate to that feeling, and I'm sure there's plenty of other women have related to that feeling. I will say for a 100% fact, there was times where I did not go places because I didn't like how I looked that day. I didn't want anyone to see me. It's just a part of the woman experience. I hate to say it, but it's unfortunate. And it's just really sad. And I feel like she just really depicted that because the guy clearly wanted to meet up with her, and he was still texting her and asking her when she was gonna come. And she's just sitting there depressed, and she just totally blew him off. And especially now that she sees Sue's makeup, Sue's clothes, Sue's billboard, she's just constantly comparing herself again and again and again. It's Sue's turn again to live in society, and she is doing another one of her workout videos at the studio, and while she's dancing, something weird happens to her hip. They show the production crew on the music video, and it's all white guys. This is the shit I talk about on my channel constantly. And sometimes I'm just like, should I keep talking about this? Like, is it too negative? Is it too truthful? Like, why do I have to tell the truth? Why do I have to be right? It's harmful, bro. It's literally harmful. Even in this movie, it shows how literally the entire crew is all these white guys, and they get a call and they say like, hey, they saw something weird on the camera. We got to watch it. And so they literally show all of the crew members standing in front of this huge screen, looking up at it as they replay her dancing in slow motion, her body parts, looking for the tiny details of imperfection on her body. Like, she runs out. She's like, I can't be. She's like a child, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed into the world. Like, everything's perfect. Everyone loves me. Everything is amazing. And now she has an imperfection. And everyone's like wants to see it, and she's fucking freaking out. She runs out. She can't deal with it anymore. It's like, you think? So they pull her ass up on the screen, and they're watching in slow motion. She runs out, and she starts to feel this weird thing that appeared on the camera, and she ends up pulling a whole chicken leg or chicken bone out of her belly button. And so she realizes that Elisabeth has been eating non-fucking stop. This also again speaks to a lot of women's experience, a troubled relationship with food. There's a lot of us out here with a troubled relationship with food. Elisabeth has lost her career. She doesn't have to worry about her figure. She's depressed. She's angry. She's eating non-fucking stop. I mean, when she goes to sleep, she's got chicken carcasses everywhere, food containers, she is just like binge eating. I wonder if the director, Coralie, struggled with that, as many women do, as it's very underreported, struggling with eating and orders, because that's what it looks like. When she was stressed, she was on a fucking eating rampage. So just like she did before, 1 week is not enough for Sue. She has to keep going. So she keeps over sucking out of Elisabeth. Sue finds out that her workout show is done, and that she's actually been promoted to do the New Year's Eve show, which is like a huge show, and she's going to be the belle of the ball. And so as Sue gets to this point, originally Elisabeth's bed sheets were pink and fluffy, and she just fell down like she was just, like I said, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. But now the sheets are black and they're silk, and I feel like this was a moment to show how Sue has gone to the dark side now. It wasn't just like, I'm innocent, I'm a Stepford wife, I'm young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed little girl who doesn't know anything about the world, and everyone's telling me I'm pretty and cute and everything's bubblegum, rabbits, and rainbows. Now it's turning into vanity. Now it's turning into arrogance. It's turning into narcissism. So as Elisabeth comes back to the real world, she is aging at an alarming rate. There's cricking, there's cracking, there's all kinds of sound effects going on to show her aging process. We do still have more work to do in this area of how we portray old people, and I would say the elderly in general. The way that Elisabeth is portrayed as she ages as like gross, as she's portrayed as disgusting. Like, this is one of the bigger negatives of the movie, is that they portray her aging process as repulsive and disgusting. It's possible that's because that's how we view it. We do view aging and getting old as disgusting. There's a bit of a disconnect there. There's a bit of disassociation. Us not realizing that if we are so lucky to live that long, that will happen to all of us. Elisabeth again calls the substance headquarters and talks to them about how Sue's behavior is just so terrible, and they tell her that she can stop the experiment if she wants. She decides not to. She feels like, it seems, that what Sue is doing is like the most entertaining part of her life, is all she has. Again, if we're going along with this motherhood allegory, you could cut your child off, you could not participate in their mess, but she still chooses to be a part of it because she is getting something out of it. Elisabeth opens the cookbook her boss gave her, and she starts making all these recipes in the cookbook, some nasty, crazy looking food. In the meantime, she's watching Sue on a TV show that is like, you know, a late night talk show, like Jimmy Fallon vibes. And Sue is basically, you know, talking so bad about her, talking about her mother that she has to help. Again, with the whole mother-daughter thing. Sue refers to her as a dinosaur and old. And when she was doing that, it reminded me of some female rap beefs, particularly, for example, like Nicki Minaj, when she was criticizing Lil' Kim because Lil' Kim, I guess, felt in some way that Nicki didn't pay enough of an homage to her when she was coming up and starting out. I do distinctly remember Nicki calling Lil' Kim a has-been, old, you're run down, you ran through, you know, all these kind of things. Well, I remember when she did that, I was 21, 22, when she made Roman's revenge. I remember even then thinking like, you're gonna regret this. Like, you're going to get old too, you know? I always just felt uncomfortable with it. And then now to see 10 something years later, all these people beefing with Nicki Minaj, and they're doing the same thing to her. They're calling her old. They're calling her grandma, a has-been. That's basically how Sue was treating her. It just goes a certain lack of respect for our elders, older people, and people who came before, and particularly women who paved the way. Watching Sue on the late night talk show is enraging Elisabeth. She's like mocking her and talking like her. And she literally says, "You would not exist without me. I birthed you. Ungrateful child. I birthed you." Children taking. Oftentimes not even giving credit to where they get things from. As a creative, everybody's taking things, borrowing things, getting inspired by things from somebody else, right? So many people say that their biggest hero, their biggest inspiration is their parents. Those are your first heroes. Those are the first people that you look up to, your immediate caregivers. We're watching Sue, who was birthed from Elisabeth, not give credit to Elisabeth, talk down to Elisabeth, and not even acknowledging like, girl, this is where you got all your swag from. So after the night of Elisabeth being enraged, Sue wakes up and she sees that the apartment is disgusting. It's completely trashed, and she decides, that's it, no more. I'm not switching back. And she's going to drain Elisabeth for every single thing that she has. Eventually, she does this for 3 months. Okay, she gets a boyfriend in this time. The man is living in the house, and she goes to equalize herself with Elisabeth. But when she extracts the liquid, it's black. Sue ends up calling the customer service people of the substance, and she asks how she can equalize, and they let her know that she needs to give Elisabeth back time to recuperate and get more fluid. But she doesn't want to do this because this is the same night as the New Year's Eve show that she's supposed to do. Sue ends up getting so bad that she's forced to switch. And Elisabeth wakes up and she's this old, ugly, decrepit, wrinkly monster. Sue's boyfriend comes to try and check on her when Elisabeth basically scares him off because she's just so disgusting looking. Elisabeth looks at herself in the mirror and she's just really become a monster. Sue has taken everything from her. So Elisabeth ends up calling customer service, and she said, all right, this is it. I'm gonna actually stop the experiment now. As Elisabeth is starting to perform the termination procedure, just as she's about to get to the end, she has second thoughts. She really has a moment where she could totally check out and she could change the situation, but she just felt that motherly instinct to protect, that no matter what, even if she drains me dry, even if she takes everything from me, I just can't get rid of her. I just can't kill her. I just can't do it. It is a bit of like a Frankenstein moment. Like, I cannot kill my creation, my monster, no matter how horrible, how many people they terrorize. I just can't do it. So just as Elisabeth is deciding that she cannot do it, that she cannot kill her baby, her creation, Sue wakes up. And Sue realized what she's going on. And at this moment, this is the first time in the movie that we've ever seen them two awake together. After this moment, the movie turns a hard fucking left turn, okay? All hell breaks loose. And Sue beats the ever-loving shit out of Elisabeth. All the stuff that she was pent up, like, you won't let me do this, you won't let me do that, like literally like a fucking angry teenager. Sue is dragging her around, punching her, kicking her, slamming her head into the wall. This is how teenagers treat their parents. This is how young 20-somethings, how we treat our parents. We grow up, we don't like the way that they raised us, we don't like the way that they behave, and we just fucking wild the fuck out on them. There's a point during this fight when they're near like the steps, like going towards Elisabeth's bedroom, and Sue kicks Elisabeth clean fucking across the living room. It is some Chinese kung fu movie, Super Saiyan, super kick, freaking Haorong from Tekken Tag Tournament, super kicked her ass across the living room, man. A part of this is definitely like showing how younger women treat older women, how younger women even view themselves aging. Her finally looking at Elisabeth and seeing that this is like her mother, this is like her future, where she's gonna end up. She's like, man, fuck that. Fucking kicked her fucking ass clean across the room, man. Punched her in the face, slamming her head on the fucking ground, man. Like violent anger and resistance to aging, old, mom, parents. Even just today, I sent my cousin a picture of Melissa Ford and Rihanna when they were younger. And I was like, I sent her this picture. I was like, this reminds me of us. And she's like, yeah, it definitely is. And I'm like, I don't want to get old. Like, I want us to have this like young energy. Like that scene definitely represents the like fighting fucking aging, fighting fucking getting old with an AK, with a missile, with a grenade launcher, with everything that you have. Sue had crackhead strength in this scene. After she's pretty much killed Elisabeth, she leaves her there on the floor and she leaves, and she has a bit of a tear, but she's like, you know what, I gotta do my show. Unable to equalize, Sue is just not feeling well, and she goes to the bathroom and she realizes that her teeth are falling out and she is not going to survive this. Like her body is pretty much falling apart because she has not been able to take more from Demi's life force. As she's leaving the bathroom, she runs into her boss. He's there with all the shareholders, which, side note, who are these shareholders? Who are the shareholders? There needs to be some investigations into who the shareholders are. All these old white guys who you barely can discern one from the other. And as they're talking to her, they're like, looking at her body, looking at everything about her. As the show's about to start, a bunch of topless dancers go by and they're like, all right, we gotta go. And they're like, they literally like jump away like this, like they're creeping after. And I feel like Coralie she really ate with that scene. Sue realizes she's dying, she's falling apart, and she ends up running home, and she finds the initial kit that Elisabeth used to get Sue. It says that you're supposed to use it once and then discard, but now Sue is in a position where she too wants a younger, better version of herself. Even someone as young as her wants the even younger, better version of her, because it's just never enough, right? She takes the medication against the rules, and what evolves from Sue is nothing short of a monster. A monster named Monstro Elisabeth. This monster is something straight out of The Thing. Like I said, this movie has so many references. It's giving Elephant Man, it's giving The Blob, it's giving The Thing. I don't know if it's from Star Wars, that big ass blob creepy looking thing. It's giving Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, when Professor Quirrell unwrapped his head and Voldemort's ass was on the back of that shit. Elisabeth is mixed in there. Sue is mixed in there. At this moment, I'm not gonna lie, this is kind of where the movie did lose me. Don't get me wrong, I love long movies, but it did feel like in that moment, the movie is pushing itself to go further than what was necessarily necessary. So Monstro Eliza Sue heads back to the studio so that she can do the New Year's Eve special. She ends up getting Elisabeth's picture from out of a picture frame and tapes it to her face, putting on lipstick and having Elisabeth look basically like the Joker, looking crazy. New Year's Eve show begins and Monstro heads up there. The dancers seem to like know that something is up, but they don't actually really know. Monstro Elisabeth is up there performing, and as she's getting going, her mask slips. And it's revealed for her to be the monster that she is. And people in the audience are freaking out. They are absolutely disgusted. They're like, oh my God, a lady's covering her child's eyes. Meanwhile, a couple minutes before, the child was watching dancers shaking their titties on stage, and that wasn't bad, but you know, she want to cover her eyes now. The monster starts growing random body parts. People in the audience are freaking out. They start screaming, freak, monster, throwing stuff at her, and the whole place becomes bedlam. It's pandemonium, people running everywhere. People are screaming, kill the monster, kill the freak. Of course, it's so many men trying to attack her and kill her and harm her. A man comes and tries to cut off the monster's head. Meanwhile, another head grows in its place. I feel like this is the director's version of, you ever see those videos of like a painter and they have a blank canvas and they're just like, they're just like throwing paint at the wall, just doesn't even matter. Doesn't matter if it gets on the ceiling, whatever. They're just like, just getting out their frustration. She just wanted to puke it all up on the screen. It also reminded me of the end of like Quentin Tarantino movies. Like, you know how in the end of Django Unchained or Kill Bill, or even Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, all of a sudden shit just starts hitting the fan. People are killing each other, blood's flying everywhere, heads are rolling, all kinds of stuff. Also had, you know, paid homage to Carrie with being covered in blood, and the whole audience is covered in blood and they're locked inside, and eventually the doors open or something and the hallway is filled with blood, which, as I said earlier, the movie was paying homage to The Shining with the initial opening scenes of the hallway, and it really definitely gave The Shining with the blood in the hallway and on the walls. Monstro Eliza Sue eventually leaves the studio and heads out onto the street. Her body starts to fall apart. Her legs explode, her other legs explode, and she falls down, and she just becomes one with the sidewalk. So eventually the body melts down into the sidewalk. Elisabeth Sparkle's face primarily evolves from the monster, and it kind of slithers out. And as this piece of her oozes across the sidewalk, it goes to her Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame. It's just looking up at the sky, at the stars, with the iconic palm trees hanging over. And she seems to feel a sense of peace in this moment. This could be an allegory to how we are when we all get really old. We just become a blob. We just become sludge, a skin suit, if you will. And so as Elisabeth is looking up at the sky, glitter comes down upon her, and she's happy and she seems at peace, and it falls upon her, and it's overnight. And so the sun then starts to rise. It dissolves her, and she's happy and she's at peace, and she melts away, and that's it. Let's say that maybe at the end we all welcome death as it knocks on our door. She was able to not only live the life of so many people's dreams, but then she also got her revenge in the end. The next morning, she's just pretty much cleaned up and wiped away. And that is a statement on our human existence, you know, especially with this whole movie about worrying about appearances and looks and how people perceive you and how people feel about you and how you feel about yourself, and the things that we spend so much time trying to worry about, when in the end, all we are is dust. Just as bright as our star was shown, it fades away. This is not really gonna matter one day. I think that a lot of the stuff that we put ourselves through, and a lot of the anguish and insecurities and the self-hatred and self-torture, it really doesn't matter, you know? And I think that's a really good message and ending note for the movie. Sitting around and worrying about what other people think about you and think about the way you look, it really just doesn't matter. So that really sums up my opinions on the substance. I do think that Demi Moore is going to be up next, potentially for an Oscar nom for this movie. I do think it was a good and entertaining movie. I love to see people try new things, and you know, over here, a feminist film, we're licking our fingers for that. I've already watched it twice. It is a movie that I will watch again. I think it's a movie that will age well. Again, the cinematography was fantastic. That opening to the film, iconic. And like I said, should be a lesson to any filmmaker who wants to understand show, don't tell. That movie was it. A lot of the discourse around this movie is that it's about body horror, it's about aging and this stuff, but I feel like the motherhood element of the film, for me, was really hard to ignore. And I don't even have children, but I just know how I've done my parents, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Sorry to my father, sorry to my mother, sorry to my aunt. Anyway, Thank you guys so much for watching this video. You know how it goes. Please leave a comment, rate, subscribe. Let me know what you think. If any of you guys have kids and you've seen this movie and you felt some kind of way about this movie, I would love to know. I mentioned some stuff about myself in this movie, and I would love to see a little vulnerability from my subscribers, okay? From my viewers. I want you guys to tell me about some moments where you really felt insecure, or tell me about moments where you were supposed to be somewhere important, or you were supposed to see somebody important but you couldn't because of maybe your appearance or maybe your looks or something like that. Like, I would love to know about that. Let's get a dialogue. Let's get some good conversation in the comments. I love when you guys tell me stories and tell me about your experiences and stuff. Again, thank you guys so much, and I will catch up with you in the next one. See ya.